Hey there, thanks for watching. My name is Christiana and this is The Well-Behaved Wallet, and today I'm here to talk to you about my journey toward minimalism, the step-by-step process I went through to transition into a more minimal lifestyle and where I see that going for me in the future. Now I know minimalism as a term is kind of a very popular buzzword. There are a lot of videos about it, the whole Marie Kondo movement of paring down your lifestyle, but I thought it was interesting for me, especially to look back and see where this started for me and what I went through to get there. So kind of giving you a step-by-step overview of what I went through. So I actually sat down, I took some notes because I found the whole process and the concept really interesting too. So minimalism as a concept is actually both an art form and like a musical style and a style of writing as well. So it's actually, it began around the mid-1960s as a reaction against the sort of abstract expressionism. So you had all this like excessive color and lights and shapes and people's impressions almost of what reality was, and the extreme reaction to that was paring down to the most minimal, basic and essential form. So I mean, you had kind of over-the-top expressions of minimalism where there's just like a blank canvas or like a dot on a blank canvas, things like that. But the whole idea being that this is sort of paring something down to its barest essence. So that's kind of how I saw it as well. And in thinking about my own history, how this came about was very much in line with my debt-free journey, my journey to be debt-free. And that started around 2007 when I realized that I had all this debt, and it was like a lightning bolt. And the debt I acquired was very, very gradual. It was like a dinner here, a purchase here, a treating a friend here, like very, very gradual. And then the realization came one January after like a particularly big Christmas, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have all this credit card debt and I'm not making that much, so we gotta do something about this. And a big Dave Ramsey quote is, you can wander your way into debt, but you can't wander your way out of debt. And that is very, very true. So all of this, my journey toward minimalism, my interest in minimalism happened around the same time as my debt-free journey, and I kind of was aware of the term around then. And to me, what that is really considering things in your life and how they fit in with what you really want, and making sure that what you have is what you want, so you don't end up with a bunch of stuff that you don't really want, right? It kind of makes sense financially, rather than spending all this money to get things that you can't remember and you don't know, like how this came to be, really being intentional about your spending in your life. So that's kind of how it overflowed into my life. So this was around 2007. In 2008, I went abroad to teach and work, and I came back to the States in 2010, and for me that's kind of where my minimal journey really started, because I don't know if you've ever moved anything, but especially overseas, it's like you really consider every single item, because it's like, do I take this pair of shoes or this book or these two books, and really making that decision of what's most important to you. Really encouraged to do that, especially when you move overseas. So moving there was a challenge. Moving back was even more, because I had to decide what I wanted to take, and it actually, while there was a fair amount of decision making involved, it was pretty simple, because if you don't take it, it doesn't come, and it's just goodbye. You say goodbye to it. So that's what happened. And when I came back to the States, I had a very curated list of belongings that I had acquired over that time, and for the most part, I was really intentional in documenting and taking an inventory of what I had. So like I had an Excel spreadsheet with a list of all my belongings on it that I brought over, especially books. I had author and title of all the books I had, and I think I had about 50 books when I came back. Now add that to the 200 or 300 books that I had at home already. That was a lot of stuff. So coming back was even more challenging, because I had all my stuff in my mom's house. And I decided when I got back, I was like, I want to do something about this. I want to pare it down. But I don't know if you've ever tried to declutter, but it is not an easy process. It's simple, but it's not easy, because you really have to decide what to do with your belongings. You need to decide where, what's most important to you. And it's not something that you're forced to do, so you can put it off indefinitely, right? And like in your daily life, like you can find ways around your clutter and stuff. So I've found that I had to be very intentional about setting aside time to to declutter. So that happened around 2012, and I can tell you it was another lightning bolt moment, similar to my debt in 2007. My belongings in 2012 just got to the point where I just had enough. Like, I was sick and tired of having all this stuff. So I remember it very clearly, Labor Day of 2007. I woke up one morning, it was a Monday. I woke up and I was like, I'm sick of it. And I went to actually Lowe's and I bought a whole bunch of stuff. I decided I wanted to paint my room, and that was what I was going to do. So I bought all these supplies. It was like 6 in the morning. Thank goodness, like, Lowe's opens at it opens at 6 or 8, I forget, but it was early. So I got this stuff, I brought it back, and then I took, like, my room was a mess at that time. Like, I was not by nature, I am not by nature a neat person. I have learned to be neat because that's something that's really important to me, is, again, to have a very neat and well curated environment. And I decided around this time, I think when I was living alone abroad, I decided that I was going to become a neat person. Along with a minimal journey, I was going to become someone who was neat and who was tidy and intentional. So that process happened around then too. So I went to Lowe's on this Monday. I brought all my stuff back. My room was a disaster, and because I wanted to paint, I pulled everything away from the edges of the room. I put it into the middle of the room, and I covered everything with, like, those plastic drop cloths. And I washed down the walls, and I painted the walls. And that day, Labor Day of 2012, was for me the start of my whole, was the actual start of my journey toward a minimalist lifestyle, because I made the decision then that I wasn't going to put up with clutter in my personal space. So after doing that, and it was tough because it was a Monday and I had to go to work the next day, and I've got all this paint and I've got, like, paint fumes, so I, like, slept in the living room while my room was drying and airing out. But with the stuff that I had in the middle, I just went crazy getting rid of stuff. And I went to work, I came home, and I just started decluttering immediately, and I was just throwing stuff out left and right. And I specifically tackled the area of my clothes and my books, like my belongings, because that's where I knew I had so many extra things. Like, I knew that with my closet, I could easily get rid of half the things in my closet and not even miss them. So that's what I started to do back in 2012, was really be intentional and really cull intentionally. And on the books front, so that was a little bit challenging, because I love books, I love to read, I love having a physical book. So I had 200, 300, now 350 from the books I brought overseas, books hanging around, and I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? And again, with that same, I just didn't even think about it. And this is before Marie Kondo. This was actually around, like, the time of, I was learning about feng shui, and there's a book by Karen Kingston called Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui. And that at the time was my sort of guide through it. And it's very much along the idea of, if it sparks joy, like, keep it only if it sparks joy. So that's what I used as my sort of guide stone, along the Marie Kondo idea of sparking joy. Karen Kingston had the idea that you should honor every belonging. Same thing. She was really my guide through that. And I would say I went from 350 books down to about 100. So I got rid of 2/3 of my books. And I remember this very clearly because, like, I had my university textbooks and things like that. And I still kept some of them, but I got rid of, again, maybe 2/3. And what I did, and this, like, broke my heart to do in actuality, but I cannot tell you what, I cannot name one book that I got rid of. But I took them all, I put them in paper bags, and I just brought them to the recycling center. I did not go through the process of rehoming each and every book because I knew that I would overthink it if I did that, and it was just too much energy. I just needed to get them gone. And it worked like a charm, because I can tell you each of those, I think I have maybe 75 books in my collection now. Every single book is precious to me, and I see them and it just makes me happy, because that my collection is edited down to the books that really mean a lot to me, and I pick them up at least once a month. Like, I will, just touching those books sometimes makes me feel better. Like, I have Invisible Man, I have Moby Dick, I have a drama textbook, I have Edward Said's Orientalism. So I have a bunch of books that really mean a lot to me, and going through that process made me realize how much they mean to me. So that was my process with books, and that was kind of like, that was the biggest chunk of it. So I started with my surroundings that I could control, just my room. Like, forget the rest of the house. Like, the rest of the house, as you've seen, is filled with other clutter that is not only mine, but my room I could control. So my room I took action in, and that was a start. The books was the second part that I kind of edited down. The third part was my wardrobe. And this also was a process of going through and saying rigorously, I am not going to use these. And so there were a couple different levels. There was the level of these things, these clothes are just, they're ratty, they've got holes, they're pilling, I just need to get rid of it. And then I would keep lists of things that I would like to replace, like tank tops, for example. Like white tank tops are a big one because they get dingy really fast. So I would say, okay, I'm getting rid of this and I'd like to replace it with this. So that was a big one. And another thing that I did was to very clearly decide, and this I took notes, I decided right around in 2015, again, this is like a year process, like over several years. I decided that I was going to have a core color concept, and I was only going to buy clothes in that core concept. So my basics are black, gray, white, and nude. So those four, like nude, neutral. And then my accent colors are blue and gold. And the reason I chose blue and gold was because when I was a kid, in elementary school, primary school, I went to a Catholic school, and my best friend and I, we wore uniforms, and she's still my best friend to this day, and our colors were blue and gold. But this story, I don't know if she remembers, but she doesn't. She swears she doesn't. But like we were talking one day when we were like kids, and we were talking about our weddings, and I was like, oh, well, of course, like I'd want you to be my maid of honor. And she's like, oh, well, for your colors, if it's in the summer, choose a gold, because I look good with it in gold. And she's like, if it's in the winter, maybe a navy. And I was like, perfect, done, gold and navy. Those are our colors. So that's why I chose blue and gold. And it kind of reminds me of a good time and a good time with her, even though she doesn't remember. So I remember, and it was a good time for me. So those are my core colors as far as my wardrobe goes. And sometimes I'll do like a red or an orange for an additional accent, but really blue and gold are my core other colors in addition to black, white, gray, navy, nude. And that really simplified my buying, and that way I know that if I buy something new, it will go with other colors in my wardrobe. That doesn't mean that I don't wear colors like red and purple and green. It just means that I don't buy items of clothing that are those colors, which has really simplified things because now I know exactly what I buy, what I need to buy. So that's how I did it with clothes, and I can say that has 100% helped me A, get ready easier in the morning, B, have fewer clothes in my closet, and C, really love the clothes that I do have, as well as simplifying buying decisions across the board, because I even know, okay, these are my core colors, this is what I buy. Like I was buying like a piece of camera equipment, and the color choices were red, white, there were a couple others. But I was like, I chose the white over the red because white is part of my color concept. Red is further down on that list. So I was like, oh, that makes everything simpler. So that I can directly tie back to my minimal journey, and it has really simplified everything across the board. So that's my step-by-step journey with minimalism. And then here are some things that I've gained from it as well. I've for sure gained clarity. There's less stress in my life, especially reflected in my belongings. I save money, and I really have learned myself better, I have a better idea of what makes me happy, what I enjoy, and what's important to me. On the downside, here are some challenges that I've experienced in regard to minimalism. I feel that sometimes there's an element of perfection that creeps in. Now, perfection is not doing everything perfect. Perfection is sometimes not doing something because you're afraid you won't be able to do it perfectly. So that for sure has crept in. Also, I found that my capacity for dealing with clutter has drastically gone down. This can be a good and a bad because I am more apt to organize cluttered spaces, but I'm also more easily distracted by clutter. So that's kind of both good and bad. But that's kind of my history with minimalism, how I've dealt with it, and then my process of how I've done it. I hope this has been interesting, because I love hearing about people's experience and how they've simplified and leveled up their lives. So let me know if you've gone through a minimal journey and how that started for you and how it reflects in your day-to-day living. So thank you again for watching, and I hope, as always, that you will keep watching. Bye.